Hello, world, and welcome to the third episode of Austin Shippey's Apocalypse podcast. So before we get into this episode, which is going to be all about the reality of witchcraft in our world and what that actually means and the truth behind it, and me explaining to the random person on the street what witchcraft is, what witches are, in all seriousness. And I'm aware that some people have ideas about witchcraft that come from Halloween and movies, especially because we don't have a lot of awareness of history, and especially Western history, and especially pre-Christian history in this culture. So, I'm just hearing a little bit of a ghost audience saying, okay, slow down, bear with me. I don't know what any of this means. And I'm aware of that. And I'm also aware that in occupying my unique position as a spokesperson for witchcraft and magic, that I'm going to be talking to a lot of people who consider themselves the same thing that I am, but in actuality they are not. And a lot of people are going to hate me for that. But I think that the clarity, the snug fit of the puzzle piece that this will provide to people's ideas of history and cultural history will be potent and sensical enough that people won't really have very much to complain about. At this point, I've been in this for so long and so deeply and devotedly that there isn't really a whole lot that escapes my grasp in this particular area. Of course, there's a lot that I haven't thought about that is part of other people's imaginations that never really happened. And in that world, that unlimited world, that broad scope, perhaps I will miss something. Perhaps there are further possibilities that I haven't thought about. But I'm coming from the perspective of someone who has studied in depth the witch persecution eras, magic on this earth, and have been initiated and trained in the Alexandrian Tradition. And I'm no longer practicing the Alexandrian Tradition, but it is a very beautiful, organized, long-lasting, and stable witchcraft tradition that seeks to initiate people and train them in the magical arts so that they can serve the craft and the priesthood and its gods as best as possible. And it's basically a magical lodge or a society of people, a closed society. And anyone who has delved into it for about 10 minutes will know that all of it is taken in the utmost secrecy and seriousness. And it's real people. It's not for show or entertainment or money. It's for power and magical power and real magical results. So for the muggles out there and the non-magical people, just try to dip your toe into that water. Imagine yourself joining people who make magical things happen. And I'll talk more about what magical things actually are, but for most people it's a terrifying idea and a very intimidating idea. But there are a lot of people who were born a certain way to where they sensed that a certain power or ability needed to come out or be refined. And those people typically become witches and make that power something that they can use to make their life and other people's lives better. So we will get into that, and we will go in depth on the topic. From the actual world of a witch, what is real witchcraft? Before we get into the video, I want to remind everyone that I have books available for purchase on Amazon and on my website, austinshippey.com. I also have a Patreon for people who want to support me. And this is a reminder to subscribe to wherever you're listening to this podcast on, and to subscribe to me on the internet to keep up to date with all of my things. And without further ado, we can get into the video. What is witchcraft? Witchcraft is seeking to externalize psychic power from the mind and the body. So when someone becomes a witch and is practicing witchcraft, they have learned how to successfully externalize psychic power from their body. I guess to explain psychic senses and psychic abilities, we all know those times where we get a strange sense that someone's about to call, and then the phone calls, the phone rings. A lot of us have had dreams that in some way come true, or answer a question, or give us a symbol or an oracle of something that we needed to hear, a sign in dreams. There are other people who have waking visions, and I'll often get flashes of images or video or words in my head, and they will be answers to a problem that has directly confronted me. And this is known as intuition, basically. But the witch will seek to maximize their intuition to get the most out of it. In the realm of dreams and sleep, a witch is able, eventually, or naturally, inborn, to be able to leave their body in spirit form and explore the world. And there have been tests done on this by many people where a card or a note will be placed on top of a dresser or in a different room, and the operator goes to sleep and leaves their body and goes to the note or the card and then goes back to their body and reports what it was. And we have many tests that show that this is possible. And it's something that most people would just think was not possible. But witches believe in an energy field that surrounds everything. And it's called the astral matrix, or just the energy around us. And through this realm, witches can send energy at an instant, or send their spirit at an instant. They can also use this astral connection to deliver messages to spirits, or receive messages from spirits. And this includes angels, demons, gods and goddesses, and all forms of intelligences that exist in the sphere around us. A witch is also able to bewitch people, and this is linked up to the idea of blessing or cursing someone. Someone who is capable of bewitching can draw someone near or send them away. This is often described as the power of a woman in Christian times, when sexuality, and especially women's sexuality, is shunned. The Christian men, in their fear, said that the sexual woman is Lilith, a demon, closer to Satan, and is capable of bewitching. Basically, she's capable of luring men in. What they didn't own up to in their childlike state of the men in the Christian persecution eras of witches, they didn't own up to the fact that everyone has that power. So here we are, once again, talking about a power that's basically invisible, that travels through the air, beauty. And it hits the eyes of a person, and they're drawn in. Classic image of witchcraft that is nevertheless true. A witch, because of this astral matrix and this psychic sense and this psychic ability, is able to perform sympathetic magic. So they can make an image of a person or a thing, and through working magic on that image, are able to affect it. A witch is also capable, because of this psychic connection, of joining up with a coven, either connected through the astral realm or connected through the physical realm, to make their magic more potent. A coven is also an area where these abilities are taken seriously and can be trained by a teacher or an elder or a group of elders or a lineage of elders going back generations. And the arts of witchcraft can be taught to the new initiate of whatever age, like a school. So how does a witch get power? How does a witch do this? Because it's good to start with the psychic abilities that witches use, because it brings it down to earth so that people on earth can see and visualize it. So if you've ever met a witch, you've probably seen them wear some sort of jewelry or stones or symbols or tattoos or clothes, some way of expressing themselves, letting people know that they are basically a spiritual person or straight up a witchy person. Depends on the person's form of expression. It depends on the person's form of expression and what they want to show the world and the average person. Obviously, in countries or societies or past villages or future times, there will always be people who keep it completely hidden and don't want to tell anyone. And that's because it's easier to live life in the mortal world as a mortal, just the same as it's easier to live life in the witch world as a witch. Makes life easier. Makes people not attack or harass or persecute you. So how? How does this happen? There is a rare phenomenon of people being born magical or with some sort of magical gift. And these people can grow up to become magicians, practicing magicians. So that means they will work with spirits and deities, as well as natural sources of energy, to heal people, heal themselves, call upon angels to help situations or adjust situations. They can call upon planetary fields of energy or Kabbalistic spheres of energy in order to effect change. So it's all about pulling on energy and sending it out and watching change happen because of it. That's what a magician can do. Some people will grow up and completely snuff out their abilities and say, this is nonsense, this isn't true, it's difficult and confusing and scary, so I don't want to do it. They can go their whole life subduing their abilities. There are other people that do research or practice or find a teacher who have some sort of natural ability or some sort of pull to it. Or even if they just come into a place in their life where they feel that they could do it and make it happen. Those people typically join covens or pick up books. Either way, to become a witch, you need some sort of teacher, because it's, in essence, the androgynous power of the other that awakens witchcraft. and allows you to work with it and experiment with it. It's for this reason a lot of the idea of witches is sexualized or naturalized. Seeing witches as basically wild animal people running around screaming in the night. It could theoretically look like that, but usually it doesn't. When people get together, especially nowadays, they prefer not to have to run around and scream to get their power out. They prefer to be able to do it easier ways and quicker ways. And so that's a lot of what the training of a witch does, is it teaches you how to get out your power and use your power in very simple ways. So the beginner witch who so one of the first steps of awakening or coming into your power as a witch is that it has to be awakened. And it could be compared to lust. You see an object of your desire, you feel that lust, and that passion and energy is awakened in you. And you can either act on it or not act on it. And it's the same with all people. And that attraction is like a link between all people, like a magnet or a line. And so you can follow that and see the interconnected web of all people and their emotions toward each other. Some people, their energy that they're putting out towards people is hate. Some people, their energy they put out is lust. Some people, their energy they put out towards others is intelligence or control, or they're the boss of everything, or they're submissive. All of these sort of simple ways often do relate to sex because it's just a simple language. It's a very simple, universal psychic language. So a lot of people think that witchcraft is just, they believe they have magic, so they can wave their hand and things will happen. That's not what it is. Witchcraft has been observed by people as a science for a long time. And it's known that power either has to be there and then tamed, or it has to be awakened and grown and controlled and learned how to use. So we're talking about a physical force here. We're talking about a force that, if you work to develop it, you can make things happen. A lot of the time, the results of witchcraft are subtle, very subtle. A lot of the time, they're just the simplest solution that could have happened anyway, pops up. But because of all the work you put in, possibly because you're being guided by a higher force, everything seems to fall in line easier than it ever could. Witchcraft isn't wave your hand and sparkles come out and the lamp knocks over. It's energy. Witchcraft is all about working yourself up to be able to control your own energy. Often this working up and this refining of the soul to be able to control energy comes through working with gods. In the persecution times, when ancient deities were forbidden, a lot of the people who were working magic behind closed doors would work with familiars. And to explain a familiar simply, it's a small spirit of a totem animal, a sacred animal that symbolizes properties. So a mouse can run fast and hide. A bird can fly and spot things from a distance. A cat can hunt in the night and see in the dark. During the witch persecutions, and early Christianity, any sort of sacredness or magic being attributed to animals was forbidden. That was devilish. The pagan world had many gods, goddesses, and spirits, totem animals, explanations of the soul, belief in energy. When the Christians came in, that was converted to superstitions that we still have recorded. And the gods and goddesses became mythic, folkloric figures, such as the man in mythical figures such as the Man in Black or the Queen of the Fairies. So these shadowy figures that the witch barely sees, and maybe only sees on the Sabbath night. And the Sabbath night may have only been to Muggle eyes a lucid dream. But to the witch, the Sabbath, whether they go to it in the physical forest or on the astral plane, is a place where power is developed and awakened. You can meet with your teachers and talk to people. You can be with your coven and communicate with your coven while laying in bed, and you can learn things. Speaking as a practicing witch, all of these things are things I've experienced, and I experience them on almost a daily basis. I woke up from a dream this morning where in my sleep I was talking to people I know, and we have dreams where we do the same thing, or we talk about the same thing, or we're in the same situation. I have very frequent dreams where I'm in a temple, or I'm with other witches in some sort of setting, and we're doing something and making something happen. And when I wake up, I can see the whole process was organized and intentional and lucid. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who by now, I'm about halfway through my notes, I'm sure a lot of people by now are saying, okay, this is crazy talk. This is fantasy. He's making this up. It's hard to explain to such a dry scientific society the real impact that energy has on people. And it's to each person's strength or detriment, whether they accept or deny it. So I'm not telling anyone to believe me. But I'm sure if you met me, you would see. It's like Alex Sanders, the founder of Alexandrian Witchcraft line. It said in a video that I have uploaded to my YouTube, as a rule, people say to me, "Are you a witch?" And I say yes. And that cures the mystery for them. Then when I start talking, because I know they want to know more, they begin to treat me with the utmost respect, because they realize I'm not quite like other men. That I have got something real, and I can convince them because of my sincerity. And that's the conversation I've had with people in many a bar, at many a psychic booth. Many people who have sent me messages and asked me questions through social media. And I am telling you as a real person with a life and feelings and emotions and problems that I wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't something real about it. And that's all I can say to convince anyone. And that's all I will say to convince anyone. And I hope that when people talk to me, they can see what I'm talking about. So, here is a witch sitting in front of you. I have learned how to externalize psychic power from my body through ritual actions, through using tools, through teachings, even through stories that teach lessons that are handed down in the craft. I have worked to find what my mental and physical abilities are and maximize them through discipline. This is the same thing that monks in the East have done. This is the same thing that prophets and mystics in the Catholic Church have done through their fasting and praying and vigils. And it's the same thing that the people who wrote every piece of the Bible did. It's hardcore mysticism. It's devoted mysticism. It's mysticism where you seek to get consistent results and be able to put pen to paper and write them down, or be able to receive your desire through it. So now we get to the big turning point that will lose some people. All of this is done through a divine, godly source of power. There is no other way. There is no other way to refine the soul and enhance the power that you have unless you are looking upward at a deity. If you're looking downward at a demon, you're not getting there. If you're looking outward at an angel, you're not getting there. If you have a familiar spirit that you talk to, you're not getting there. Because you have to look up, and you have to look at the truth. And if you're not looking up and at the truth, it's not working. You may be fooling yourself by coincidence thinking it's working. You may be working a bit with energy and the law of attraction and quantum mechanics and bringing about your desire that way. But you're not practicing witchcraft because you haven't developed your power. The only way to develop a power upward is to submit to something above you, because you have to attain to it. So whatever your idea is of witch power, accept that it's higher than you and accept that you need to work up to it. And be humble. And realize that the way people have done that exact thing throughout history is through worship and acknowledgement of the divine, of higher sources of existence and awareness, and of different planes. Sorry, I'm closing the window because, one, I don't want to scare the kids with what I'm talking about, and two, there are people outside. So what do I mean even by God and the divine? I mean this Kabbalistically. There is a source from which all creation comes. Nowadays in our scientific world, we've described it as the Big Bang. Either way, it's the origin point. It's the code and plan of our existence and the starting point. Now we can look around at us. What else is there? What else is true? We have the male and the female in all living things. What's the power between male and female? Magnetism, discipline, and production. Through magnetism, societies and couples and families are pulled together. Through discipline, law is formed and knowledge is gained. Through production, children are born and our race continues. And those are very physical forms of power, undeniably. Yet they all happen through an invisible connection, unspoken, only felt. What I'm saying is the power of the witch works through natural law and is individable from the highest perception of the male god and the female goddess. Occultists have called the union of male and female Baphomet. It is the androgynous, masterful human who has incorporated all of the elements within themselves to such a state where they can function, if need be, as a super intelligent androgynous being. This is what magicians and witches seek to do in the circle, the magic circle. It's an inner alchemical transformation. This is another reason why it's seen as, the Witchs Sabbath is seen as an orgy in the woods and acting like animals in the woods. Because to the Christian eyes who deny the divine feminine and deny all sorts of feminine and oppress women and view women's sexuality and woman power as evil, the worst nightmare of this type of patriarchal Christian is the divine feminine power. So take a look at any movie you can imagine a Witch's Sabbath happening in. Any book or anything. Here's what happens. It's nighttime. The moon is out. A group gathers together. They will dance and sing, which is the same thing that every church congregation or voodoo ceremony will include as a focal point. They will feast, basically thanking their magic and their divine mother and father for the food that was blessed upon them. And they will also, speaking into the ear of the man in black or the queen of the fairies, their desire and will, what they want to happen. And that's magic. And they can do it by symbol. So let me talk to you about magical symbol real quick. Every witch is bestowed an athame, or they're told to make one and then consecrate it. I'm sure in the olden days there was no consecration. It was just your weapon. Magical weapons have been around since the dawn of time. It's a symbolic vehicle for a psychic power or wisdom. You can look at Native American medicine staffs. That is a magical weapon. It contains the virtue of wisdom passed down through color, symbol, and function. And it's treated with due respect by all who see it. It's an instrument of power. Whoever picks up that tool is a wielder of power. So a magical weapon in a magic circle is not some glowing object that if you touch it, you'll get cursed or blessed. I mean, it is, but it's not physically. It's a container for a psychic, energetic power that's otherwise invisible. So when you see a witch's athame, it's a symbol for their power. And it's a way for a coven or a group to acknowledge each other's power and not forget that they hold that power. So the real athame is invisible. It's in you. It's your weapon, and you can use it how you will. The Christian Church, aside from their incense and holy water, they prefer not to deal with energy in any way. They prefer to deal with the physical, scientific, rational here and now. And it's no wonder that that would exclude the divine feminine, because where men are naturally gifted with a mathematical, non-emotional brain, more so, women are naturally gifted with a more understanding, compassionate, abstract thinking brain. Mother Nature designed us this way to be the perfect pair and to work together. Unfortunately, systems of dominance implemented by men with weapons, Christianity, this was subdued and called sinful. One of the most terrifying ideas that people during the witch persecutions would think was that they would step out of their house and someone would put an energy onto them. So they can go to the store, their local market, and if they cross someone and that person is a witch or a bewitcher or someone with some sort of malign power that's going to corrupt things and cause bad luck. Very superstitious thinking. Very superstitious thinking, but it was taken as extremely literally back then. It was seen that if someone gives you the evil eye at the market, you could die that night. And it was that serious. And for reasons perhaps strange or obvious, it did happen. There are many accounts of... Sorry, I'm going to plug in my computer real quick. There are many accounts of someone bewitching someone or casting a spell on them using a doll or a puppet or some other form of blasphemy or a symbol, basically communicating through invisible energy. Or visible, but not visible in the way it transmits, because it's light energy, the way we see. So the person sees that poppet that the person stuck with pins, and that night they have a heart attack. Now, scientists today would say, oh, they just worked themselves up and gave themselves a heart attack. But there are also a lot of people who would say, no, there was something weird about that situation. Normally, that wouldn't happen and wouldn't be able to happen. But because the whole society believed in witchcraft, it did. And I'm reading a book right now, The Dark World of Witches by Eric Maple. It's taken me a long time to go through it because it's just really in depth. It has a lot of details. He describes many times where people died or fell ill, seriously ill, after someone placed a curse on them. So this is people do this today not because they're crazy, but because it's a real thing. Anyway, the person who has this power, the witch, they can curse or they can bless. Nowadays, people usually only bless, unless someone does something horrible. And then even when a witch today curses, it's often just to basically point karma's finger at that person and say, this is what they did. Send whatever they need back to them. Basically, teach them the lesson they need to learn so that they don't do that horrible thing again. It can be compared to prayer, but the idea of Christian prayer, when we suddenly enter that patriarchal, mathematical, logical system, the idea of prayer is that you speak to the male god. He might hear you, and he might give you what you want. The witch, being the feminine power, linked less to the solar, more to the earth, and the lunar, which the earth and the moon are connected. The earth and the moon are Mother Nature. The sun and the stars are Father God, the fire in the sky versus the water. It's very detailed. everything that goes into witchcraft, especially initiatory witchcraft that is passed down in lines, has all been that way because everyone could agree on it. Because they found it to be true. So I have these people on Instagram who act like I'm some sort of neo-pagan metaphysical person. And they have the idea that initiates are that way too. Initiates of covens or lines. Sweetie, first off, have you ever stepped foot into any of these areas before? Or have you been reading books on your own in your living room? If it's the latter, do more research before you talk. If it's the former, where did your teachers and peers come from? Are they people who sat in a living room and read books? Or are they people who traveled and met other people and delved into history and practiced for years and years to make something work and make something make sense? I guess it's something that non-initiates don't do. Look into the mirror at the truth. My theory for the divine feminine lunar power that the witch supposedly has always wielded is that in ancient Britain, before Christianity, the people had a very good grasp of psychology. Psychology is the psychic, feminine, lunar, subconscious arts. It's the things that Christian men in the persecution ages could not even fathom, the idea of psychology and archetypes. But now, because of science, we have them proven. I think ancient Europe had a better understanding, and I think you can look at the Native Americans and their wisdom, and you can see that they have a great understanding of the psychology of each phase of a person's life. The weaknesses and strengths that that person has, and how the elders of the society can help those people in those stages. Because when Christianity invaded, they erased everything, all the wisdom and all the knowledge of the past. They didn't understand psychology. So they didn't understand when a beautiful woman walked up to you, that it's natural to have a response of attraction and magnetism. That's what nature intended. But they looked at nature, Mother Nature, and said, that's the devil. And here we are, everything having changed, and we're still scientifically trying to understand dark matter, energy fields, psychology, and we have a psychologically unhealthy society. We have women that are facing a lot of depression, a lot of unsatisfied women. And we're so focused on politics and war and disease that there's very little time to focus on those things. And most people will go their whole lives, every day of every decade, avoiding therapy and avoiding counseling. Because it's seen as Pandora's box, and it is. But as soon as you open Pandora's box, you realize, oh, it's everything I've experienced before. It's my mom, it's my dad, it's my family, it's my upbringing. It's the world I live in right now. It's the truth. People can't face the truth. The truth says that people can communicate in invisible ways, that some sort of telepathy, whether natural through signs and smells and 100 different sorts of perception, telepathy, communication without any sort of words, it happens. And it happens a lot. And if you start looking in your daily life and observing your conversations, you'll see that a sort of telepathy is there. A sort of underlying human connection. Personally, I believe it travels through some sort of energy field that is basically undetectable to us right now. Because I've seen it. I've seen it manifest in ways that would be impossible if we're talking about just the regular senses. Generally, the spirits and forces of witches. Sorry, I need to plug in my computer. My charger isn't plugged in. I wish I could use witchcraft for that. Generally, the power and the source of power and the spirits that a witch works with will be kept secret. Their names will be kept secret. Because, one, it's an aspect of yourself that is sacred to yourself and part of your own soul journey. So it shouldn't have anything to do with the people around you. It shouldn't be a part of your socialization, your social life. It's a sacred connection between the mind and the heart of beings that are mysterious. So generally they're not talked about in the light of day, and their names are kept secret. And still, the names are kept secret. They're not even written down. They're just passed on through word. A lot of these names and terms. Because, first off, there'd be no reason to write it down. And second off, it makes it less sacred to do so. Throughout the persecution of witches in the Western world, psychic power, or invisible power, or hidden power, basically, I call it lunar power. And it is the lunar feminine power of Lilith that is forbidden by the Bible. And the Bible says watchers came down to earth. Part angel, part human race began, and knowledge from the heavens was spread throughout the world, giving us technology and makeup and art, and making us intelligent and complicated, thus necessarily leading to sin, but also leading to greatness. Christianity would say all of that is evil. Witchcraft would say that's the natural order, that's Mother Nature demanding that humans grow and learn technology and be able to harness that power from heaven and not be animals anymore. That's technology. Alongside technology is always magic, because it's the technology that we can use but we can't explain. Still today there is technology that people can use but can't fully explain. And I'm talking to you about it right now. I can't explain why telepathy exists. I can't explain why I've been able to sit across from people and tell them things that their deceased loved ones tell me. Basically, what they whisper into my brain, the images they give me. I can't tell you how I'm able to describe scenes from another person's life who I've never met. I can't explain why I can tell someone scenes from their relationship with another person who has passed on. Nevertheless, I've experienced it, and many people have experienced it, and it's true. As I sum up my list of notes, I'm going to go into, well, how does this happen? How do these awakenings happen? How is this power bestowed and passed? Often an initiation ceremony will take place, because the initiation ceremony creates a sharp line between the world of men and the realms of the invisible reality and energy forces around us. So when someone is first taken into the magic circle, they might have never seen any sort of vision of the other side or of the astral world. But through their training and awakening within that circle and within that coven or with that teacher, their inner eye will be opened. And they'll be able to do all of the things that I talked about, all of the psychic, astral, blessing, cursing, sympathetic magic, all of these ways that witches get their inner invisible power out and make it affect the world. That's what they'll start learning. Often, this is the reason why often a book will be given. And for a lot of history, the average person couldn't read. Only the elite could read. Nevertheless, nowadays we can read, so books are given. The thing about anything that would be written down in witchcraft is you can't fully write it down. You can explain, because it's not on our earth. You can explain in a way, like when people wrote down that or depicted angels with wings and a halo and white clothes. That doesn't mean there's an invisible angel with wings and white clothes floating around that can reveal itself. It means they're describing a sort of energy. So the white would symbolize the purity of the vibration of the angel. The wings would symbolize its ability to travel at an instant, like light. Its halo would represent its intelligence and connection to God. So all of these things are ways that we can explain and communicate about energy. Same with any sort of book or chant or spell or ritual that could be given or invented by the witch. They are ways to externalize an inner energy. So a spell where someone gets a doll and wraps it in string to bind someone. It's not happening because they have a doll and string. It doesn't matter what color the string is. It doesn't matter what the doll is made of. It doesn't matter if you purchased expensive oils or candles or props. The reality of the magic is happening on a different plane of existence. The goal of the witch is to step foot into a happy and magical life and be satisfied. That's the end goal of basically any animal on this planet. Step into a happy life and be able to be satisfied with whatever you need, whatever your soul desires. This is often done in witchcraft through ecstasy. And it's the same way religious experience is awakened during a voodoo ceremony, as well as any sort of church that includes singing and dancing and worshiping. It's, you realize in the interconnectedness of all things and of all people and of the tribe or the cult. You realize through that interconnectedness the force of magic and how it works. Without other people, you can only guess. Because if you cast a spell on a person that's miles away, and then you hear the next day that it worked, you don't get to see the actual interaction happening. Through witchcraft ritual, the energetic interactions are explained and described without words. Of course, words can be added: songs, chants, spells, incantations, words of power, names of power, and any sort of deity or spirit can be invoked to make it work. But what it teaches you is the influence of power at an instant and over time. The whole idea of the experience of the witch is that they come into a sort of power, or they figure out how to make it work. And through the aid of the divine and anything that they can reach out with their arms and grab for power, they can make it work. And it necessarily takes hard work and discipline. Even if you're born with psychic abilities, even if you think things and they happen, you still need to learn to control it. And if you can't, you're not a witch. And here's where I get into the end of the video where I explain what is not a witch, what is not witchcraft. Witchcraft is an extreme form of making prayer work. It's taking the power from God, which each of us has inborn within us, a spark of the divine. It's what fuels us. It's our existence. It's our soul, our passion, our drive, the thing that keeps us alive, the spark of sun that's inside of our bodies, the electricity in our bodies that doesn't stop running until we die. It's using that power to its full capability to change the world. Necessarily, because of our physical situation on this earth, it includes all those other things. And it also includes more that I didn't get to, that there's so many details, because in my opinion, witchcraft is a living thing that has been living since before Christian times. I don't believe that it was passed down through an organized priesthood all the time. It very well could have been, though, because these are the things that are so sacred and so invisible that the only way you can hang on to them is by creating a ritual, a standardized ritual, and continuing that ritual forever. And as soon as people figured out how to make that happen, it could have been the 1930s. It could have been pre-Christian times. It could have been 100 years after Christians invaded and said paganism is the old thing and now we're going to switch over to this Jesus figure. It doesn't matter, because either way, it's the science and art of using psychic energy to effect change. That's the power that the witch has. That doesn't explain the world that the witch lives in. The world that the witch lives in is political from the outside. Society will call you a liar, or they'll be jealous, or they'll hate you, or they'll think it's some form of entertainment. The person on the inside of witchcraft will be competitive or jealous or think that they have the right way and that no one else has the right way. I'm trying to step foot outside of all of that and just be as mature as I possibly can and say that witchcraft is a phenomenon, and it's a detailed phenomenon, and it's a living phenomenon. And as soon as you kill off those details, I think you're detached from witchcraft. I don't think you're plugged into what it actually is. You may be practicing magic and folk spells, but if you cut off these things that I've talked about, or you don't believe them, including the divine male and the divine female, in conjunction, symbolically, the great rite of sexual intercourse. It's alchemy. It's becoming a fully balanced, complete human being. So, witchcraft starts at birth and it ends at death. It's a journey for life. And it's a holy power, and it should be treated as such. That is my explanation to the world, for now, of witchcraft. Before I log off, reminder to subscribe, check out all my online content, share this link with people who need to hear it or would like to hear it, and may the blessings of the old gods be upon you. I'll see you in the next one.